Greg Estabrooks, and it is debate time here on your TV. The 5 candidates for the riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming for the October 21st federal election are here. They are in studio, and they had a special, quite exhaustive draw to determine who was going to go first before we got started tonight. And Jordy Carr of the Conservatives will go first. I'll read a little biography of Ms. Carr, and then we'll let her have a chance to talk about herself and her political goals. Born and raised in northeastern Ontario, Jordy Carr is the mother of 2 grown children, Sheridan and Harrison. Jordy owns and manages several businesses and real estate interests in the Nipissing-Temiskaming region with her husband, Robert. Elected to Callander Municipal Council in 2018, Jordy is active on several committees and continues to volunteer her time for worthy causes in the community. An avid outdoors person, Jordy loves hunting and fishing and, most importantly, riding her Harley. Jordy believes that giving back and working collaboratively to make a positive difference in the community is incredibly important. Jordy, you have a minute.
Okay, good evening, and thank you, Your TV, for hosting tonight's conversation, and thank you to the viewer for joining us tonight. My name is Jordy Carr. I was born and raised in North Bay, and currently I live in Callander with my husband, Robert, where we have raised our 2 children. My family's roots are deep here in the area. Robert and I have worked hard to get ahead. Like you, we have to save for retirement, save for our kids' education, and pay down a mortgage and make car payments, and so on and so on. I understand the concerns and the issues that you tell me when I go door to door. I understand them because they are my concerns and issues as well.
10 seconds.
Some of you are worried about the future, so am I. I truly believe you can do better. Or we can do better, sorry.
The minute is up. Next up is Alexander Gom of the Green Party. Alexander was born and raised in North Bay, Ontario. He attended Nipissing University and graduated from the 4 years honor BA program in the Geography of Regional Planning and International Development. He subsequently completed a Master's of Education degree, also at Nipissing University, and a Diploma in Advanced GIS applications. Let's ask him about that later. For the past 9 years, Mr. Gom has taught in South Korea for 2 years, China for 6.5 years, and volunteered on education and environmental projects in Nepal, Kenya, and Thailand. Now back in North Bay, Mr. Gom is excited to apply his knowledge in education and passion to work for a greener, healthier, and more prosperous Nipissing-Temiskaming riding. Alexander Gom, you have a minute.
Hello, I'm Alexander Gom, your local Green Party candidate for Nipissing-Temiskaming. It is an honor to be representing the Green Party in this district. And the reason I'm here is because we are facing a crisis. We are facing a crisis and we need to prepare for it. And the Green Party is the best positioned to move us forward into the future. The massive turnouts last Friday for the climate strike all across this country indicate that climate change is on Canadians' minds. The research that we have for our 20-point plan called Mission Possible shows that we can transition out of a fossil fuel economy to a green economy, which will entail jobs, investment in our youth, health care, and a brighter, more prosperous future for everyone. Thank you.
Mark King is in the middle of middle podium. Mark was born and raised in North Bay. He's currently the owner and president of H. Freeman and Company. Prior to business ownership, Mark enjoyed a 23-year career in rail traffic control with CN Rail, following which he developed a 32-lot subdivision. Mark has a long history in community affairs, most recently as a longtime North Bay City Councillor. Mark and his wife Jocelyn live in North Bay. I'm very proud of his 3 children, Alexandra, Mark Jr., and Aaron. Mark King.
Well, thank you very much, Greg, and welcome to the viewers of Cogeco. And thank you, Cogeco, for the opportunity, which I thought maybe might not happen. Again, my name is Mark King. I was born and raised in North Bay. Many people know me as a North Bay City Councillor and also chair of the Nipissing District Social Services Board. My interest in government affairs began when I was president of the Chamber of Commerce, where I gained valuable insight into both the benefits and challenges of working and living in Northern Ontario. Two major projects in the city of North Bay have received final approval under my leadership as Vice Chair of Castle Home and Chair of the Arena Committee. I've learned how to navigate government bureaucracy and to get results.
10 seconds, Mark.
As your People Party candidate, I'm eager to have an opportunity to represent the people of Nipissing-Temiskaming.
All right, thank you. On to our fourth candidate, Rob Boulay of the New Democrats. Rob is a learning system technologist at Nipissing University in the city of North Bay, of course, where he lives with his wife Anna and their 2 dogs. Rob is fighting to bring equality for Indigenous peoples, to make life in Nipissing-Temiskaming more affordable, to improve access to rail, and to protect livelihoods in the north. Rob believes that tackling the climate crisis should be a nonpartisan issue and knows the transition to a new green economy will create good, sustainable jobs for northern families while protecting future generations. Rob is committed to implementing head-to-toe health care, universal pharmacare, and working with community groups as well as members of Parliament to ensure that in a country as prosperous as Canada, no one is left behind. Mr. Boulay, you have a minute.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to take a moment just to recognize that we are on Nipissing First Nations land. And this territory is covered by the Robson, Huron, and Upper Canada's treaties. So my name is Rob Boulay. I'm here to be elected, or to discuss being elected as your MP. This is the standard part where we talk about issues and other things that other parties have done, but I wanted to just take a moment to just kind of introduce myself to you. I am just an average, North Bay person. I'm a computer nerd. I love to play video games and board games. I like long walks in the fall when there are no bugs. But seriously, I'm a working person like you. My wife and I struggle to meet ends meet. I've had to choose between
10 seconds, Rob.
Oh my! Food and medical treatments and prescriptions, dealt with mental health. I have paid my fair share of taxes, like you. I believe people should come first.
Okay, Rob, we've got to stop you there. We'll get a chance later on. Fifth is Anthony Rhoda. Mr. Rhoda is the Liberal Party candidate for Nipissing-Temiskaming. He has served as MP in this riding 4 different times, elected. During the most recent term, he was the Assistant Deputy Speaker. He's the past chair of the National Liberal Caucus and sat on such committees as Veterans Affairs and Defence. Anthony entered politics in 1993 as the president of the North Bay and District Chamber of Commerce, later became a city councillor. His professional experience includes regional manager, industrial research and assistance program, Director, Government Relations, and sessional lecturer at Nipissing University. He's a longtime volunteer, speaks 4 languages. He holds an MBA, a finance diploma, and a BA. He and his wife, Chantel, are proud parents to Samantha. Mr. Rhoda, you have a minute, sir.
Good evening, bonsoir. I would like to thank Cogeco for organizing this debate. Our government has had huge progress over the last 4 years. Our economy has created more than 1 million new jobs. Unemployment is at a 40-year low, and Canada Child Benefit has lifted over 300,000 children out of poverty. We've come a long way since 2015. However, there's still more to do. We must continue to address the climate change and move towards a green economy and continue to create quality jobs. We need a national conversation and action to address the needs of our growing population of seniors. We must address this issue of income security, quality health care, and all aspects of senior housing and all types of care. The next 4 years can be exciting and productive. I need your help, and in order to continue moving forward, I'll need your vote. Thank you.
Right.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rhoda. You're going to get the first question. We're going to go from right to left with the questions. We went left to right with the introductions. Anthony, you were recently criticized in the local paper by Mr. King, the PPC candidate, citing a lack of prioritization and federal support for the Jack Garland Airport for the recent infrastructure repairs and extension of the runway. The airport and the Airport Industrial Business Park's success, most would believe in this town, will certainly need federal support, federal money in the future if this area is to remain competitive. What is your reaction to the criticism, and what will the Liberals do going forward that hasn't been done in your critics' opinions to this
Most,
point.
most definitely. We have contributed quite a bit to the industrial park up there. If you look at the companies that are starting, there's $1 million that went in to get top dollar for a cooling unit that would make the company more competitive. Money went in for the infrastructure. What Mr. King was referring to was money for the crosswind runway. The crosswind runway falls under municipal infrastructure, which should be funded by the province. You see, what happens when the city took the airport on, they took ownership of it and it becomes municipal infrastructure. We tried different ways thinking, okay, you know what, we might be able to squeak it through. Unfortunately, there's criteria on all government funding and the crosswind runway did not qualify. We tried though, and that's the important thing is we kept trying. Now, what happened, what we did do is there's something called the gas tax fund, which was given to all municipalities, and the city of North Bay got an extra $3.4 million that they were able to use against that. Now, in the meantime, the province finally did come up and pay for it, so the crosswind runway got
You'll get
done.
a chance to rebut. Who wants to challenge?
I will, Greg, and I made the statement. I know the circumstances. We need to recognize that that's a regional airport. It doesn't belong to just the city of North Bay. It's used by regional people. And it's absolutely important to understand the need for that crosswind runway. We have international flights.
There's access to federal money that hasn't been accessed, in your opinion.
Well, I think the issue
here.
falls with Anthony. He, quite frankly, he's got to find that money. If Vic Fideli could find 2.2 million at the provincial level, Anthony surely could find another million to take the property taxpayers off the hook in the city of North Bay.
For someone who's been in municipal politics that long, he really doesn't know how things work. The municipalities are a creature of the province. The federal government
And the
puts
province
money
is a
in.
creature of the federal government, aren't they? Through
Exactly,
transfer
but there's
payments.
usually a transfer payment that goes through. So the transfer goes from the federal government to the province and then to the municipality. There's other infrastructure that we can go both ways,
Well,
but this one we
Sudbury
can't.
received, what,
Jordy, go ahead.
$360 million worth of funding for infrastructure over the last 4 years. So how does that work?
If I can explain that, I wish candidates would learn the facts before coming here. The $60 million did not go to the city of Sudbury. It went to the province to build Highway 69 and to finish it off. Just like we have Highway 11 from Toronto. It's 4-lane all the way to North Bay. Highway 69 is very dangerous, and the money was approved at the federal level. The province was dragging their feet and not announcing it, hoping that they would run into they were playing politics basically. So what happened is the MPs, both Mark Serret and Paul Lefebvre, announced it without the province because the province didn't show up. So, there was politics being played there with the provincial
stop you
Conservative
there.
government.
I want to go back to this issue, Greg, and quite
30
frankly,
seconds, Mark.
AMO. AMO is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. At this particular point, 92% of all tax dollars go to both levels of senior government, the federal government and the provincial government. 8 cents of every tax dollar goes to the municipality. So Anthony is suggesting now that the municipality pay for the cost of that runway? I don't think so. And we have other issues that we'll talk about shortly that surround the airport and certainly federal requirements.
Anybody else want to jump in before I move on to the first video question? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the issue at hand, but I would like to stress the Green Party's priority, which is to strengthen access to rail as well as electric bus services to increase connectivity throughout the north and throughout Canada. It's, in the long run, cheaper than expanding airport access, and it also provides access to markets for people who would not normally have access to markets.
Rob.
Just really quickly, I just wanted to say that part of our new democratic plan is that we want to have a better relationship with communities. So I think this is a point where there's some contention, but we would want to talk a lot more with the communities
All
to
right,
find.
we've got about 40 seconds.
So if I can get back to the rail issue, and I certainly agree with that, I'm fully in favor and would work with the provincial government to reinstitute the Northlander between Timmins and Toronto. I believe that's an economic generator. I don't know why the federal government hasn't taken the time to help the province get to that passenger train service. It's unbelievable that we don't have it.
Anthony, I'll give you a last word before we move on. You got 30 seconds, sir.
The ONR is a provincial crown corporation, and I'm willing to work with them. We have talked in the past, and it's something that I'm willing to do, and we continue to do.
All right. I'm going to stop you there. We're going to go to our first video question, which is from Peter Chirico, who is the President and CEO of the North Bay District Chamber of Commerce. We can roll that now.
Peter Chirico, President and CEO of the North Bay District Chamber of Commerce. And our question for all candidates: Canada has not undertaken a comprehensive review of its tax system since the 1960s. Is your party willing to initiate a full independent review with the goal of aligning it with the realities of today's competitive environment and helping set our businesses up for success? And would your party agree to a royal commission to conduct that comprehensive review of Canada's tax system, guided by the principles of tax competitive simplicity and fairness?
We kind of made that a question in 3/4, but that's okay. Rob, you can be the next one up because we started with Anthony. You're next. Go ahead with, does the NDP have a comprehensive plan about the tax system overhaul in this country, and is there one needed?
The NDP, we definitely agree that taxes are not being spent efficiently. We talk about making different choices and better choices with the money. We see,
Example.
We see people struggling every day to get by. We see people who can't afford dental care, who can't afford their prescription medicines. They're making those choices over food. So we definitely see that, and then we see governments buying pipelines for billions of dollars. We see corporate loans being forgiven. We see students being charged interest on their student debt. It's just a better use of money in our plan.
Okay, I'm opening it up to the floor. Who else wants to jump in on taxation review?
Well, the People's Party of Canada has a very direct policy with respect to taxation. I'll start with no carbon tax, and getting back to the money that was allotted, the double up of the gas tax money. That carbon tax money made no sense at the federal level because really the municipalities weren't required to spend it to somehow alleviate the carbon CO2 loading. On top of that, small business taxes would be cut, abolishment of capital gains tax, and a reduction of income tax as follows.
Mark, how would you fund a tax cut like that? Because tax cuts have to be funded.
Absolutely. So at this particular point, CBC receives $2.2 billion, billion dollars from the taxpayers of Canada. We would discontinue that fund. We would also discontinue the ongoing third world country dollars that are being sent to
that's more of, I know that's part of your platform, but that's not necessarily an answer to this question about taxation.
Well, certainly it is. If we're able to reduce taxes to the average person, and by
this is how you would fund it, is what you're saying.
discontinuing the necessary dollars to CBC, that gives you the necessary dollars to invest in people that live in Canada.
All right, let's move on to somebody else who might want to.
Yes.
Alex.
All right. So the question was, would the Green Party be in favor of a review of Canada's taxation system?
Yes.
And that is precisely what we would do. We would establish an arm's-length federal tax commission to analyze the tax system for fairness and accessibility based on the principle of progressive taxation. The last tax commission was in the 1960s, so reform is long overdue. And this will include recommending an appropriate way to tax cryptocurrencies. Our approach to taxation takes into account the realities of living in a digital age.
Okay, I'm trying to give everybody about 1 minute. Anybody else want to jump in here?
Yeah.
No, you had your turn. We're going to go to somebody else.
I'm ready though.
Yeah, I know.
Life is expensive enough without the government costing you more. I understand the Liberals don't want to talk about their record, and they're overburdening us with tax hikes, but they're suffocating the small business. They're calling us tax cheats.
Do you have a solution for that? Does your party have a solution for that?
Solution.
Over taxation. You're saying it's
Oh,
over.
yes, tax cuts.
And how would you fund them?
How would you fund them? Well, at the end of the day, if you quit wasting money at one end, you don't need to be bringing in at the other.
Anything specific?
Well, what?
In
Sorry.
regards to cutting taxes, like what areas would you cut taxes on, or would your party cut taxes on?
Well, we're going to give a cut with the GST off home heating. We're going to scrap the carbon tax, which is bringing in approximately $4 million a day. And where's it going to? And we'll be giving seniors a tax break. And actually, everybody across the board gets a tax cut.
Jordy, I got to move over to Anthony.
I'll try to answer the question, stay on topic. The Royal Commission is a good idea. It's not part of our platform, so I can't say yes or no, and it's a wonderful thing. But when you look at a comprehensive tax review, what we've done over the years, and all governments have, is they've constantly adjusted the system that we have. And a lot has changed in the last maybe 15 years with, as was mentioned by Alex, the new cryptocurrency and the new way of transferring things. I know we're looking at different providers like Netflix. If they're doing business in Canada, they should be applicable to all the rules. So the one thing I do believe, though, is we should have a progressive tax system that gets higher as your income goes higher as well. That's something that is the only way of equalizing, at best, the differences in income, and make sure that all people can benefit from the services that the Government of Canada and the provincial governments provide.
Rob's I got to give Rob a chance here if he would. Do you want to?
Yeah, definitely. So when we're talking about adding other taxes, we want to bring in a tax that targets the multimillionaires. So the 20 million people, they have not paying their fair share in connection with the rest of us. We need to make them pay their fair share, and that'll help fund all of the programs. This is going to directly impact small businesses and everyone, because we can use that money to fund pharmacare, and we can fund dental programs, and that takes a burden off of small businesses.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. This one will be directed to Rob first. Canada's complex web of overlapping relations at all levels of government is actually, yes, I'm supposed to go to Mark, sorry. Complex. Created by our outdated tax system is, I'm skipping one here, sorry. Strangling business, driving away investment, preventing our resources from getting to market, and diverting attention from more productive tasks. Would your party give regulators economic growth and competitiveness mandates, per se? Would your party implement a 2-for-1 rule to require the elimination of 2 regulations for everyone introduced over the next 4 to 5 years? Mark, we'll start with you.
So I'll respond to that by quoting Warren Beatty, who is the CAO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. They made taxation their #1 issue. The issue that we have in this country, quite frankly, is that none of the businesses are competitive in the world market. Our costs are too high, and when I look at the platform of the other parties here today, there's not one party that in their platform that I've seen actually indicate some savings in tax. I mean, it's been unbelievable to watch what's going on, and the promises after promises after promises. And the sad fact of the matter is, there's not one party here other than the PPC party that will look at that problem and identify
open it up to everybody now, Mark. Sorry, you can have a rebuttal in a moment. Anybody else want to take on this issue about regulations?
Could I ask you to repeat the question,
Sure.
if you don't mind, because I didn't catch it kind of got jumbled up
That's
at the
on
beginning.
me. Thank you for those kind words.
Not a problem.
Canada's complex web of overlapping regulations at all levels of government is strangling business, driving away investment, preventing our resources from getting to market, diverting attention from more productive tasks. Would your party give regulators economic growth and competitiveness mandates? And would your party implement a 2-for-1 rule to require the elimination of 2 regulations for every new one introduced over the next 5 years? Go ahead. That's it. I'm done.
Okay. No, I actually the one of the issues with Canada is that it is a federation of provinces, and each one has its level of government. It's not a unitary government, say like Great Britain or England, where you would have one government that rules over everything. So every government is trying to do what's best for their province, and that creates a problem in that we're creating. We talk about free trade with other countries. Our biggest barriers are within the country, and that's something we have been working with within with the provinces, is trying to break down those barriers. Some of them are wine, because like Southern Ontario or Okanagan in BC have developed wine industries. They've done so by protecting them initially. Once they got on their feet, that protection should go away, and that's something that I think we're trying to work towards right across the country.
Okay, I'm going to open it up. Anybody else want to weigh in on this one? Jordy, go ahead.
Yeah, the Liberal government has failed to ensure stable markets for the Canadian agriculture sector, as well as the farmers are paying the price for the lack of trade agreements with China. And I think that, sorry, what was the second part of that question?
About implementing a way to kind of bring down the number of regulations and red tape.
And I think for us, we need, I think for us, we need to do a better job of our trade agreements with the rest of our trade partners.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in before we move on?
I just want to comment that, I mean, she did mention the Liberal Party, so I have some kind of rebuttal. With canola, which is what China stopped, we worked with the farmers, and their exports are actually up by 17.5%, according to the figures I have. So we are working with them to get that out there. If there's any examples, concrete, I would like to hear them.
Canola, soy, and pork, and to the cost of $1 billion to date.
All right, anybody else want to jump in?
Yes.
Alex, go ahead. His hand was up first, Mark.
Thank you.
I was next.
So what the Green Party's position is that we will be providing favorable conditions for Canadian companies. The tax system that we have right now and the incentives we are providing internationally are for multinational corporations that have questionable social, economic, and environmental practices, and they have had deleterious effects on our communities. What the Green Party is proposing is to apply a corporate tax on transnational e-commerce companies doing business in Canada. We would also tax internet giants like Netflix, Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Uber. Moreover, we would impose a financial transactions tax of 0.5% in the finance sector, as
Okay,
France
I'm
has
going to
done.
give Mark the last 30 seconds, and we're going to go to another video question. Mark, you have 30.
And certainly, you know, to your point, Alex, that makes no sense. Absolutely no sense whatsoever. Netflix really will pass on the cost to the consumer, and the consumer will pay the price. On top of that, HST will be increased at the same time. Makes no sense whatsoever.
All right, Mark didn't use his whole 30 seconds, so we are going to move on to our next video question. That comes to us from Nipissing First Nation Chief Scott McLeod, and here's his video question.
Anin, bonjour, Zwanagabwe Dijinakas. Hello, my name is Chief McLeod from Nipissing First Nation. And my question to the candidates is the federal legislation on cannabis has literally left First Nations on the sidelines as they pass their jurisdiction down to the province. How do you see an answer to rectifying this problem so that First Nations can be included in the economic benefits of the new cannabis industry? Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Chief McLeod. I'm going to let Alex Gaume kick off the answers for that issue, if you have something on that.
Right. Well, I don't have anything specific for including First Nations communities into the cannabis market, but I am aware that this October, more reserves will be allowed to produce and sell cannabis products for legal sale. Now, what the Green Party does propose is to remove a lot of the restrictions on growing. So it would not be treated as a toxic, harmful substance that needs to be grown underground in bunkers. It could be grown outside, which would reduce the cost for producers and allow First Nations communities and other outdoor producers to enter the market.
All right, let's open it up to debate. Anybody else want to jump in on the cannabis issue? Go ahead, Mark.
Like, certainly, Greg, you know, I understand the Chief's concern. Obviously, that's been a discussion I've had with Vic Fideli about whether or not the reserves would be subject to the same rules under the provincial standards, and I don't see any reason. We've got both feet in this now. I just don't understand why they don't have the ability to to also function inside this very lucrative market, and they should have it.
All right, Rob, go ahead. You also had your hand up.
Yes, my first meeting with anyone about the campaign and running for the election was with Chief McLeod, and we talked directly about his issues and his community's issues. And as an NDP, we believe that we need to develop a nation-to-nation approach with First Nations, and we need to work together to solve any issues that they're facing, and we need to work together on everything and build better, stronger communities.
All right, next, anybody? Jordy, you had your
In a
hand up?
rush to meet the self-imposed political deadlines, Justin Trudeau had failed to adequately address the many concerns of the municipalities, the law enforcement, the Indigenous communities as well. There's safety concern for employers, workers, and Indigenous communities that have not been addressed. And I think we need to look at that moving forward.
All right, anybody else want to weigh in? Go ahead, Anthony.
Ani, bonjour, Anthony Roda, Indishnikas, Nipissing, Temiskaming, Donjiba. When we look at cannabis, I've already had this discussion with Chief McLeod, and what happened is within about a week and a half of me having that discussion with him, we had a discussion in my office with Bill Blair regarding this particular item, and we're working towards it. And when we look at a reserve like Nipissing First Nation, they're very responsible, they have rules in place, and they're taking care of their citizens within a regulated area. And they're very responsible. We've got other reserves in Southern Ontario who just run rampant. What we want to do is make sure that there is something in place that allows reserves or First Nations communities like Nipissing to run their own businesses, whether it's cannabis or anything else, and make sure that they have that ability to do so.
Okay, we're going to move on to the second segment question here, and I'll start out with Jordy. Jordy, this question is in regards to pharmacare. How would your party build on the strengths of the existing system without reducing or replacing the coverage enjoyed by so many Canadians for so many years? How would you ensure that the costs of any new program are not passed on to businesses and employers? Because that is a big issue, of course, when it comes to getting prescriptions filled and things along those lines.
The Liberals have been promising pharmacare for decades and have never pulled through with it. Canadians will be able to count on a stable and predictable health and social program funding with the Conservative government.
How?
We plan on investing $1.5 billion in the first term to purchase new MRI and CT equipment to bring Canada's medical imaging equipment in line with international standards, reducing wait times where early detection could be paramount. The Conservatives are committed to maintain and increase Canada's health transfer and social transfer by 3%.
All right, next, anybody else want to weigh in on this? Rob had his hand up. Go ahead, Rob.
Pharmacare is a core part of our platform. It's a core part of what we want to offer Canadians. People are suffering. People need medical care. People need dental care. They need their prescriptions. They're struggling to pay their bills. I'm hearing it all over whenever I'm knocking on doors and talking to people. So the New Democrats, we're going to bring head-to-toe coverage in for everyone. And we're not going to increase small business costs. We're not going to increase taxes to do it. We're just going to spend money differently. Instead of spending it on pipelines and tax loans and credits, we're giving pharmacare to people.
All right, Mark, you had your hand up as well.
Well, Canada's public health care system has the worst wait times of any developed country. And healthcare is an exclusive provincial jurisdiction. The Canada Health Act operates in exchange for transfer payments from the federal government. And our policy at this particular point is to provide all of the HST or GST money from the federal government in the amount of $40 billion back to the province to provide proper health care.
All right, anybody else want to weigh in? Anthony, go ahead.
No, actually, we've put a lot of thought into this, and we believe that a pharmacare system is necessary, and it'll save the taxpayer and the average person who's buying any kind of pharmaceutical a lot of money. What we've done already is created an advisory council on the implementation of national pharmacare. We've appointed Dr. Eric Hoskins. This was done in 2018. We've had a report Budget 2019 committed to the creation of a Canadian drug agency. That's a new drug plan or agency that will build on existing provincial health care and allow individuals to have their drugs paid for them. Now, by buying in bulk as a large buyer, what will happen is the price of the pharmaceutical will go down tremendously, almost 10 to 1. If you look in the United States, the big companies, insurance companies, health insurance companies, they get better prices because they buy in bulk. If you're buying for a country which is even more, you can negotiate those prices
All right, Alex,
much lower.
You want to go?
Thank you. So the Green Party would, first of all, restore the federal and provincial health accord and base health transfers on demographics and real health care needs in each province, which will replace the current formula, which is based on GDP growth, which was introduced by the Harper government and was retained by the Liberals. We would then expand single-payer Medicare model to include pharmacare for everyone, as well as free dental care for low-income Canadians, which is of importance to a lot of people who want to enter
All right, Mark,
into the workforce.
We've got about 30 seconds before we go to break.
So
You had
my
your hand up. Go
problem
ahead.
with this whole scenario that we're talking about is it looks like we're duplicating a system. And we all know what happens with governments when they duplicate systems. It's double the cost. Makes no sense. The province is in position. We should let them provide the
All right, I'm
service.
going to stop you there. We are going to head to our first break. We've had a spirited near 40 minutes here on the debate. Behind the Ballot here on your TV. Back with more in just a minute. All right, we are back here in your TV/Cogeco studios for our continuing coverage of Behind the Ballot and our debate 2019. We have directed questions to every candidate. Mr. Rhoda got the one in the first segment. Mr. King will get the one in the second segment to start us off. And this question is, of course, for the PPC candidate, which would be you. Mark, your party has been criticized for its stance on immigration. Why does your party see it necessary to reduce the amount of immigrants entering the country? Do you think this will help or hinder the economy?
First of all, the policy is that we would support 150 economic immigrants into the country. That's the steadfast number at this particular point.
150 or 150,000?
150,000, I'm sorry. At this particular point, we're somewhere in the range of 350,000, which is a substantial number of people. Over a 3-year period, if you look at that number, that actually would equal the population of Nova Scotia. Substantial in its process, certainly requires a huge amount of financing in order to make that work. When we look at the City of Toronto, for example, we know right now there are some 2,600 people that are living in hotels in and around the metro area. Those people don't have places to live strictly because of the housing industry in Metro Toronto. We really have a major problem when we do this. The sheer cost of making this happen is extreme. It puts a huge pressure on the health system.
You got 5 seconds, Mark, and we got to move on.
On the health
Let somebody else
system
jump
in the province.
Okay, next. Go ahead, Jordy. You had your.
I think you've got immigration and refugees mixed up, Mark, because people who come here as who immigrate here,
No, I
they
don't
come.
have it mixed up,
Well,
Jordy.
you
I
know
don't
what?
have it
We have an
mixed up at all.
established system in Canada that works very well for immigration, and people who come here and get jobs and get their own living quarters and home.
Unfortunately, you just don't understand the system because
Oh,
the
well.
issue is, quite frankly, 1 in 4 are economic immigrants. There's another 3 or 75% that actually pull on the system inside this country. We know that right
Mark.
now.
Do you
and that
have
is a
statistics
huge,
to back
Mark.
this up?
absolutely without question.
You know what?
Can
Bottom
you show
line,
them right
Yep.
now, sir?
we have 2% death rate, 1.6% birth rate. We cannot continue the way we're going
You
without
know what
immigration.
you've forgotten about? You've forgotten the Aboriginal group, First Nations.
I have not
That
forgotten
it
about
is
the
4 times,
Indigenous.
It is 4 times the birth rate of Canadians right now.
The
Aboriginal.
statistics is
we
still
have
1.6,
forgotten
Mark.
those people, and it seems
The
to be
majority
sexy
of our
at this
population-
point to bring immigrants into the country
We-
when we don't look after
Mark,
the
come
people.
on.
When we don't look after
Mark.
the people that live here.
I
Do you know
object
what?
really
Well,
strongly to
well,
being
that's too
called
bad.
a refugee sexy. Have you
I
any idea the horrors?
Sexy.
The
No,
horrors
I didn't-
that
I
it
did-
is to be an immigrant.
I did not
to
call
be a refugee.
I did not call
Yes,
a
sir,
refugee.
you
I
did.
did not.
You said
I
it was a
said
sexy issue.
It's a
That
sexy
shows,
issue
that is
for the
tone
people
deaf,
that
sir.
want to bring them
Tone
in.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys. Okay. Anthony, you got to weigh in on this a
You know
little
what?
bit too. Everybody
This
gets a
country was
chance.
built on immigration. When we look at who's here and we look at what happened, there's waves of immigration that have come from different countries. And one of the biggest problems we've had in the past is you have whoever's in last gets treated like crap. And that's something we have to work on as a people. Now, when somebody comes here, I see a lot of immigrants who are here, they're working hard and they're adding to our economy, they're adding to our culture. They're making Canada a better country. Now, to lock them out and say you can't come, now we have a number of 350,000, not the 250 like the Conservatives, not the 150 like the PPC, or the, what is the other, the National Citizens Alliance, who wants
Well,
to
they're not here, so-
shut the door completely. No, it's important that we work with them when they come. One of the things that I was key in piloting was the rural and northern immigration pilot, bringing skilled immigrants to smaller communities in rural Canada so that we can benefit
Stop
from
there.
it.
Rob,
and our
Rob
economy
first,
can
then
grow.
Mark. Rob, go ahead.
Immigration is important to our country. We need people here. We need people in the north. To give Anthony's pilot project credit, like that's an amazing program, and we need to make that permanent. And the NDP is willing to stand for that. We have a northern deal that we created.
Okay, we're going to get to that in just a moment.
So
Go
I
ahead.
want to go back to the Indigenous issue, that every one of you have forgotten this. You've forgotten the issue. 4 times the Canadian birth rate right now of Indigenous people in Northern Ontario. There are huge problems right across Northern Ontario, right from Thunder Bay to Kenora to all of the James Bay area. There's huge growth going on in there. There's limited opportunity for these people, but yet what we're doing is we've decided we're going to
I
go
don't
to
think, Mark,
Asia or we're going to Indonesia to bring people
no,
in,
you've lost
and we
your mind.
haven't looked after our Indigenous people.
If I can just add on to that, if I'll just quote someone that I admire and know as a friend, Perry Bellegarde. No government has done more for the First Nation people of Canada, and that's the Liberal government. So we haven't forgotten them. I think it's important that they become part of society and they do well. We've had a number of programs that help them
Okay,
develop
we're going to go to a
businesses
video
and
which was
continue.
kind of connected to what the portion of this discussion was centering around. And next video question comes from, again, Peter Chirico, the Chamber of Commerce President and CEO.
Peter Jericho, President and CEO of the North Bay District Chamber of Commerce, and a question for the candidates regarding skills and training and immigration. As the world of work constantly evolves, finding the right talent with the right skills and training at the right time remains one of our biggest challenges, especially here in Northern Ontario. What is your party's thoughts on the recent approval for the expanded rural and northern immigration pilot programs, similar to the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Project? And number 2, how would your party ensure that Indigenous workforce has the skills required to meet local labor shortages?
All right, I've been asked. Mr. Rhoda will get first kick at the can.
Well,
with
obviously,
one.
this one is one that's very important to me because I was one of the MPs who was spearheading it for Northern Ontario and rural Canada, and the Chamber was one of the partners we had in this. They worked very hard to get it in get it into this region. We wanted to have someone, a local, who represented business, and they were there to do it. They've worked with the Multicultural Centre, and we wanted to make sure that it not only benefited North Bay, but the whole corridor of Highway 11, all the way over to Sturgeon, up to New Liskeard, and down to Burk's Falls, so that we can all benefit from newcomers who would come and work. As far as the Indigenous community goes, we have been working hard. We've had program after program, whether it's up in New Liskeard, they got to be $1.8 million to bring Indigenous women into non-traditional trades, whether it's welding, plumbing, any kind of Red Seal trade. They had that extra money that they brought in.
It's open
There's a
for
lot more
debate,
that
so
I
Anthony,
had.
I'm gonna
There's a lot more
stop
that we
you there.
did.
We'll get back to you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Who wants to jump in? Mark?
Well, simply again, Greg, there's absolutely no question that we have an obligation to First Nations. And the First Nations people should be our #1 priority. I know there are 600 students up there of Indigenous nature at Canadore College, which is a good start. But we haven't done a good enough job. In my trip to Thunder Bay recently, I don't know whether you know this or not, but the issues are so strong in that particular area that their high school was closed for 18 days because it was too dangerous for kids to go to school. Those are the kind of issues that are going on in Northern Ontario, and we have to deal with them. And I'm disappointed, quite honestly, that you would suggest that immigration is a
Let's
sexy
go to Rob.
issue.
Go ahead.
Immigration is really important to the North and to grow in the North, and to touch on to what Mark said, like Indigenous communities are very important as well. We need to work with those communities. We need to work with municipalities and First Nations to train people and see what they need in their communities to move forward.
We have another video question coming up which also deals with the immigration issue. This is from Deborah Robertson, who is from the North Bay Multiculturalism Center. Deborah, let's roll her clip now.
Hi, my name is Deborah Robertson and I am the Executive Director of the North Bay and District Multicultural Centre. My question is, many communities across Canada look to immigration as an important resource to fill jobs and grow a thriving community. What would your party do to support immigrants and refugees regardless of where they settle, and in particular in our riding?
Okay, I'm going to start this time with Jordy.
Well, I'm a fan of immigration. I think we need it. We need to increase it. I think we need to bring in skilled people, but I also think we need to increase our trade schools and increase training so that we have more trades people, whether they be Indigenous or immigrants.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in this before we move on?
Yes.
Mr. Gom.
Yes, certainly immigration is something that is close to my heart, as both my parents are immigrants, and I'm a first-generation Canadian. Both my parents learned English. My father became a high school teacher. My mother worked for the federal government in taxation, as well as started a daycare at West Ferris High School to help mothers who want to return to school. There are many, many contributions that are made every day by immigrants in our country, and we need to do whatever we can to assist them in the transition. I've also experienced being an immigrant, living in Asia, and it is incredibly difficult, even when you have skills and money and
Okay, Alex,
the
I'm going to stop you
education.
there. We're going to move
So
on
we
to the
need
next
support
question.
for our
No, Anthony
immigrants.
wants to weigh in. Go ahead,
Actually,
Anthony.
the rural and northern immigration pilot that we've brought forward describes it perfectly. So I encourage everyone to go online, look at what it is. It's about bringing people in who have skills. Once they're here, making sure that they feel at home, their families feel at home, and allowing them to know what's going on, where they can, sometimes just knowing what a grocery store or how it works, because your own culture has a different way of doing it. And it's amazing how simple some of the questions are. And to Alex's comment, I agree with him. Immigration is very important. My grandfather came from Italy in 1903. I'm a grandson of an immigrant. My mother came over in 1960. I was born in 61. I'm the son of an immigrant, and my daughter is adopted from China.
Okay.
I'm the
anybody
father
else
of an immigrant.
Anybody
and
else
that
wanna
is
weigh
where
in?
I say
Well,
immigration is very important to me.
I do. And of course, our policy is 150,000 skilled immigrants into the country. It's not like I'm saying that we wouldn't allow them in the country, but I still maintain we have an obligation to our First Nations. We have done a lousy job, and it's going to create further and further problems as that group grows in size. And it's happening right now in Northern Ontario.
All right, we're done with that issue. This one probably won't create any sparks. What is your party stance, Mr. Boulay, on the carbon tax? And should it stay or should it go? And your thoughts about the target set out by the Paris Agreement in regards to fighting climate change?
Well, climate change is one of our focal points in our platform. We need to, as a world, we need to come together and hold to that 1.5 degrees increase. Immediately day one, our NDP government would take action and end the fossil fuel subsidies. We need to charge big polluters properly, and we need to transition our economy to a green economy. Green energy is the future, and we need to do that. We need to do that now.
Rob, I just want to have one quick follow-up. There obviously is a powerful lobby from certain interests in this country that might fight that. How would the government be able to regulate that?
You're speaking for big oil?
Yes.
Yeah, our party is not afraid to go after the big corporations and to go after big oil or big pharma. That's kind of our point. We are in this for people and for making that difference.
It's debate time. Go ahead. Who wants? No, Alex was first.
Okay. Yeah. So the Green Party would eliminate all fossil fuel subsidies, which would include payments and tax write-offs, which is valued at several $billion annually. These include the accelerated capital cost allowance on liquefied natural gas and tax write-offs for oil and gas wells. Despite a promise 10 years ago to eliminate subsidies for fossil fuel companies, these subsidies have actually expanded for fracking and liquid natural gas development. These developments are endangering the lives of citizens.
All right, I'm going to give Mark King a chance to kick in on this, then we'll bounce it around some more.
So our policy is quite simple. Abolish the carbon tax. It did absolutely nothing to deal with the issue as far as the environment is concerned. And I think it's absolutely important that we understand that $50 a ton equates to a family of four costing $900. We know right now that the UN has stated we need $300 a ton in order to affect 1.6% CO2 loading by the country of Canada.
Mark, what is your party's stance on climate change as a thing?
The stance is quite simple. We agree that there's climate change. We also agree that we need to give the tools to municipalities to deal with a lot of very tricky items. It happened right here in the city of North Bay early on in the spring with flooding of Lake Nipissing. I still maintain that that was caused by man-made mistakes.
Okay.
And we'll get
Mr.
back to
Rhoda.
that if I could.
Well, climate change is here. There's no question. And just sitting here actually talking about climate change is what's causing part of the problem. At the point we're at now, we shouldn't be debating whether climate change exists or whether we have any influence. We should be trying to fix it with what we know already.
So the carbon tax is helping that avenue.
It's called the pricing pollution. Pollution is not free because it costs us money. And some say, well, we can just keep polluting and it won't cost us anything. We'll put it off to the end. That's not true.
So carbon tax stays.
Carbon tax, it's the price on pricing pollution. I just want to make sure you get the.
What are you doing with the money? You're charging us the money.
Okay,
for
so here's the
polluting.
way, if I can,
And
there's a
how is
question.
it helping the environment?
Okay, so to pollute costs money. But what happens at the end, if you didn't pollute very much, at the end of the year, you get a check back. So it's almost like forced savings for
so
people
who don't own a car get money back.
Exactly.
And people who do own a car get money back.
Or people
so I'm
who-
really confused on. Some people get money back, some people don't. It depends on your
people
tax
who bought
bracket.
an electric car, people who watch themselves and
We all
polluted
had electric
less.
cars, we wouldn't be able to charge them. Our grid couldn't handle it. So at the end of the day,
Well, that's
the
something
carbon,
we're working on, is working on a grid that will handle, and that's part of the infrastructure that we have to work on, and that's part of running a country where you have to look at a vision, a long-term vision, and where you want to go. Not just looking, you're myopic. You want to have a broad view for long-term, and part of it is building that grid so that we will have charging, and who knows, it might not be electric cars, it might be hydrogen.
What
We
about,
don't know
okay, I
what
want
the
to
cost
ask
is.
this question as well, zero emission vehicles. Who wants to tackle that one first? His hand was up before yours, Mark.
Yes, sir. The Green Party of Canada is committed to ending the sale of all fossil fuel vehicles in Canada by 2030. None of the other parties have ambitious enough targets to meet the requirements of the Paris Accord.
Okay, Mark, you're next.
So I don't think people really understand the process. And we all talk about Tesla cars and their capacity. The issue right now is the storage of hydroelectric power. That's the issue. There is no substantial method of storing that electrical power. Until we find that ability to store it, we're blowing in the wind, because petrol will be the form of fuel to transport, period.
Rob,
That's the way
go
it
ahead.
is.
I have with me here a climate call to action. On Friday, about 250 people toured North Bay in protest, and they went to all the parties, and it has 3 commitments in it. So you will make the global climate crisis the top priority. 2, you will ensure that our Parliament honors Canada's commitment to the Paris Accord and keeps the limit of global temperature rise to no more than 1.5 degrees.
Does it say anything about cars in there?
It does, it does. You commit to ending all fossil fuel subsidies and retraining workers in the fossil fuel industry. So with that, I'm going to sign this because this is important. We need to move forward on this, and zero emission vehicles is part of that fossil fuel economy.
Mr. Rhoda, last comment.
We've made a commitment to phase out all oil subsidies by 2025, and that's to allow them to get out slowly. I mean, you don't just cut things off right away, but you have to make it work. One of the things we've also committed to is we want to reach zero emissions by 2050. By 2050 seems like a long way off, but we've got milestones, 2030, 2040, that are hard with some consequences.
All right, we have to move on to our next video question.
I'd like to just add one last point in.
10 seconds.
Okay, I'm just wondering about your commitment to environmental stewardship, because you're sending a very mixed message in the policies that the Liberal government is bringing forward.
Why is that? I'm curious.
You're using emissions targets that were set by the Harper government, and they do not recognize the importance and the immediacy of the situation.
By making zero emissions by 2050, I think we've surpassed that, and that's something that we have to work on. But it seems far off. But we want to. We have certain deadlines and certain milestones that we want to achieve along the way. It's rewriting basically what we've done for the last 4 years. If you recall back in 2008, we ran under Stéphane Dion, who had the Green Shift. It was a great plan for the environment. My concern is that if we shift too quickly right away, I think people are there now, we can shift faster. But if we shift too quickly and say, let's say we'll cut the oil subsidies, that could cause a lot of problems. And we go back to a conservative government and we'll have a lot of problems.
Why aren't we just investing in
That's where my concern lies.
In emissions technology and scrubbing the carbon instead of stopping all the cars and doing all this? I mean, why do we not invest in the technology to scrub the emissions? We did it with acid rain. Why can we not do it with carbon? We're trying to change everybody's way of life. Why don't we invest?
So there is technology that they're working on right now at MIT. It's a particular battery that could have a long life, could have a tremendous impact on communities, but the technology is not there. And I would remind you again, when we talk about batteries, the basic material used in batteries is graphite. There is a graphite mine literally ready to open just on the edge of Algonquin Park at Bissett Creek. So when we talk about the impact of batteries and how we build them, there still is going to be a net impact to the environment.
All right, we're going to move on to the next video question. This one comes from clean, green, and beautiful North Bay, environmental advocate, and many other things, Harriet Madigan.
Hi, I'm Harriet Madigan, and I'm with the North Bay Clean, Green, and Beautiful initiative. And I'd like to pose this question to the candidates. What will your party do, if elected, over the first year of their term to bring clean water to all Canadians, especially Indigenous communities?
Now, I asked Jordy if she would go first. So, Jordy, what is your answer to her question about clean water?
It's a real shame that our Indigenous do not have clean water. I cannot imagine why it has taken so long. I know that last week when we were talking about it, Mr. Rhoda had stated that they had helped a percentage of the reserves with clean water, but it's not enough. They've had 4 years to take care of it, and only a small percentage has been done. I think we all need to work together and get this dealt with.
Yes.
Yes.
The issue facing a lot of First Nations communities is not strictly one of clean water. I know in Attawapiskat there's an issue with the permafrost thawing. The houses are sinking into the ground, which causes mold and unlivable housing conditions. So the solution is to build stilts. But how long until the permafrost below that goes away? What the Green Party is committed to doing is providing training resources for First Nations communities so that they can solve their own problems, so that they have trained, staff from their communities who can run their municipal water treatment, who can deal with their solid waste management problem, which is a huge
Mr.
issue.
Rhoda wanted to answer this as well, so.
Yeah,
I'll
when
give
we
him
came
a-
into power in 2015, there was about 145 communities who did not have potable drinking water. 87 of those now have good drinking water. We've taken care of that, and by 2021, we'll have the next 56. As you can see, we do things in stages and try to get them done as soon as possible. You cannot do everything at once. You just do what's humanly possible, and sometimes we go superhuman. So it's very important that we continue to work with our Indigenous communities to make sure that they do have water. And Jordy mentioned that it was a small percentage. This is almost 70%, so I mean it's
Mark first,
substantial.
and then Rob right after.
So we have a policy on Aboriginal issues. Aboriginal issues are extremely complex.
Yeah, but let's talk about the water issue, Mark.
We're going to get there.
Well, you don't have a lot of time to
Many
get there.
suffer from acute social problems, crime, domestic violence, substance abuse, and suicide, and also access to clean water. The People's Party will open the Indian Act. That was announced in North Bay last weekend. One of the issues that surrounds this whole process is that the Indian Act needs to be open to allow individuals the opportunity
talking about water.
for
Yeah, but
property
this is,
rights.
okay.
Property
No,
rights.
I'm going to stop you there. Rob, go ahead.
Property rights
Rob,
on
go ahead.
reserves.
The Indigenous communities not having a drinking water is not a shame. It's a freaking national travesty. It's a national disgrace. This needs to be corrected. It needs not to ever happen again. And it goes beyond that. We need to talk about grassy narrows and the mercury poisoning. We need to clean their land. We need to set up the medical centers that they need to treat people. We need to clean up the oil spills all across this country, Gogama specifically. We need to do it. It needs to be done. The NDP government is committing to that.
No, I
That-
agree with you, Rob.
Okay, hold on a second. We're going to move on to the next issue, which is kind of related to what Rob was saying there. So we're going to go to another video question. This one from university student and activist Bree Wilson.
Hi, I'm Bree Wilson. I'm a student second year at Nipissing University. And my question to the candidates is what their plan is in terms of pipelines crossing through native grounds and reserves. I want to know what they're doing to protect those water sources and what they're doing to just protect the community from spills.
I'm going to let Alice go first because I stopped him before we went to the
Sure.
video question. Go ahead. This will be yours first.
Thank you, Greg. Well, the Green Party, to put it quite simply, would not be expanding any pipeline projects. Existing pipeline projects that are being developed would, of course, have to be done in consultation with Native communities, but under a green government, we would be transitioning out of the fossil fuel economy. And so there are different ways for First Nations communities to contribute to that change.
Anybody else want to weigh in here? Mark, go ahead.
Well, simply our policy is we would support pipelines, and obviously whenever you're dealing with First Nations or provincial issues, certainly you would have to consult with that. I think it's very important to understand that process. We looked long and hard at the pipeline here in North Bay. I certainly had concerns about the pipeline through Turtle Lake. And there were a lot of discussions with the pipeline company at that point, indicating how they could mitigate those serious problems that could affect water.
All right, I'm going to cut it off there. We are going to go to our latest break, and when we come back, we'll have a special question for one of the candidates right after this on Behind the Ballot. Welcome back to Behind the Ballot. The debate continues on for the candidates in Nipissing-Temiskaming, and the questions are directed to candidates throughout the night. This one is for Mr. Alex Gom, who is ready for this question. Your leader, Elizabeth May, has said that she would decriminalize all drug possession if elected. With the recent opioid crisis, which is ongoing, do you support her stance on decriminalization? How do you feel this will help clean up the streets, especially here in this riding where there is obviously a problem?
Yep. Absolutely. I 100% support Elizabeth May in this. The evidence from other countries that have implemented similar policies stands very clear. There has been a reduction in intravenous drug use, and it also reduces the criminal element, which is of greatest concern to communities.
Mark.
Absolutely not, Greg. You know, I have firsthand experience with the drug issue in the city, and certainly it's a very, very difficult and a tough subject to watch what's transpiring. I've had numerous conversations with Max about a national drug strategy that identifies the drugs coming in over the border into this country. Purple fentanyl is a killer, and it's killed more people in this city. I only remember back last month, 3 young teenagers lost their lives in Sturgeon Falls. This cannot, should not happen in an organized society.
What happens, what is the PPC's stance on this and to try to diminish this problem?
Well, the stance is, first of all, we have, our borders are so poorly connected at this, or protected at this particular point. You only need to look at Roxham Road. As people literally arrive, we have no idea who these people are. They come into the country. Who knows who they're connected to? We know nothing about them.
Mr.
That's
Rhoda.
why we needed a tougher stance on borders.
This is not the Liberal Party stand. This is Anthony Rhoda speaking. And when we look at the Portuguese model where they decriminalized all drugs, what ended up happening is they decriminalized it. Let's look at the difference. Not legalize it, decriminalized it. So there's still a fine when you get caught. When you get caught, you are forced to go to rehab, or you get the fine. So what happens is you're forced to get out of drugs. And to me, that seems to be one of the best policies out there. On this one, I agree with Elizabeth May wholeheartedly. If we have people who are addicted to drugs, putting them in jail is not going to solve
Anthony, I just want to stop you just
What's
there
going
for
to
just a
happen is
second.
we want to get them out.
You're doing this on your own. You're not, your party
I'm
doesn't-
doing this on my own.
Okay.
I've looked at this model, and I think it warrants trying out in Canada because we do have that problem. And by allowing people to get off the drug, we're rehabilitating them. We're not creating criminals out of them.
Rob.
I have to kind of, like the NDP kind of echoes both of those messages. We need to do this. We have a drug problem, but we also have a major addictions problem, and we need to treat the addictions. We don't need to flag people as criminals because they're addicted to something. We need to be able to treat them and get them help and get them beyond that. And then we need to go after the dealers, and we need to go after the people who are bringing these disgusting drugs into our country.
If I could just add
Yep.
to that, if we decriminalize it, we can't just decriminalize it and say, okay, it's all decriminalized. There is massive infrastructure that has to be applied for the rehabilitation that goes with it. So it's a two-prong approach. You identify and you treat, and that is the key to success. Just decriminalizing will get us nowhere. We might as well stay with what we have now. But I think we have to look at it on a holistic view and look at what will get us ahead, not just look at what will make us feel good about punishing someone.
Everybody else wants to jump in as well. Go ahead. Mark, you first.
So first of all, again, Greg, I have firsthand knowledge about this. I know right now the recovery home, for example, is maxed out. I know the crisis center is maxed out. They don't have the necessary funds to carry on. We need a transition house in the city. We need a warming center in the city before winter. These are major issues, but there's no money at this particular point to pay for it. And I keep wondering.
That's exactly what I just said.
But where is the money coming from,
You have
Anthony?
to-
I don't know.
You
explain to me.
With the money you would save on incarceration, with the money you would save on policing, what would end up happening is you would have those funds, but you would have to put all that infrastructure. You're saying exactly what I said. We need that infrastructure before we can decriminalize.
Well,
Alex,
furthermore,
yeah, jump
it
in,
would be
buddy.
freeing up the police to do their jobs. Right now in North Bay, emergency services are strapped. They're constantly responding to emergency calls for either mental health or addictions calls.
Yep.
And they're not able to do their other jobs.
I did
So
a ride
who's
along
gonna
with
answer
North Bay
the
Police,
calls?
and that's exactly
Who's
what it
gonna
was.
answer the calls,
They were
Alex? I
police are
wanna know.
maxed out.
Is it EMS?
Emergency
Is it the
services
fire
are maxed
department?
out.
Who is it?
Well,
We need
what we
treatment.
have right
We
now
don't.
is there is a tiered response.
You're
in-
right,
in
three-tier
Nipissing. That's right.
response. But there's no one else out there to answer the call.
You're right. And
I know that.
what we do
And
need to
people are
do
dying because of it.
exactly. And that is precisely why the Green Party wants to explore new models of treatment that have not been tried, because what we are doing with the institutionalized treatment is not working.
Rob,
It's
jump in
not
if you want to.
install-
Rob, go ahead.
They're on the
Hold on,
street.
Mark. Rob wanted to jump in.
Yeah,
They're on the street.
I did a ride along with North Bay Police. I spent an evening with them and learning what they're doing and what issues they're facing in the city. And mental health and addictions are way up there on the list of calls that they're getting. They're strapped. There's no place for these people to go. There's no services for them to bring them to. They need that help, and that a new Democrat government is going to do that.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question.
I hate to say this, but I think we almost have unanimous consent here on this one.
Oh, let's stop then. All right, let's move on to Jordy Carr. Jordy, this is your directed question.
pressure.
Jordy, your leader has refused to take part in any sort of pride parades around the country. What is your party's stance on the LGBTQ plus community, and why would your party not support their mission for equality?
Well, our party, the Conservative government defends the rights of all Canadians, regardless. My stance on this is, we don't tell people who to love and not love. And our party also believes that we welcome people of all gender, race. There's no problem with a Conservative government will defend the equal rights of all Canadians. So I'm not sure just because he doesn't show up to a parade doesn't mean that he's got any issues.
Anybody else want to jump in on this issue? Go ahead. Mark,
Sorry.
you had your hand up first.
So simply, the PPC policy is personal responsibility, individual freedom, respect, and fairness. Those are the 4 pillars of the PPC party, and that answers the question.
Rob.
I'm an active member in North Bay Pride. I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and the NDP supports me and they support the community. We are out at every Pride. We are out supporting rights and equal rights for everyone. So,
Anthony?
We were pioneers in same-sex marriage back in 2004, 2005 when it was, and it was a nasty time. People were angry, people were upset, but we went ahead anyways because it was the right thing to do. Human rights is what we're talking about. Someone has the right to be who they are. You don't have to change. I mean, when you talk to somebody straight, you don't ask, well, when did you decide you were straight?
Exactly.
No. I mean, it's just like you don't ask, when did you decide you were gay? I mean, it's just, you are who you are. And it's just, and I've often said, it's not about coming out of the closet, it's about having the courage to say, okay, this is who I am, I'm not ashamed of it. And that's
Love
what
is
we
love.
have to
Alex had a
facilitate for
question
people.
too.
You represent them regardless of their sexual orientation.
Yeah, well, the Green Party has a very long history of supporting LGBTQI2 plus people and identities because we feel that they are essential and genuine to a genuine way to achieve social justice and equity in our society. The Green Party was the first political party in Canada to call for same-sex marriage in the 1980s. This was during a time when many communities in Toronto were facing horrible discrimination by police force and did not have the courage to mount demonstrations for fear of physical reprisals. The Green Party of Canada stands firmly with the LGBTQ.
Okay, we're going to go to our next video question. This one also from Nipissing First Nations Chief Scott McLeod, and we're going to roll that clip right now and get response after.
Anin, bonjour, Zonagabwe Dijinakas. My name is Chief Scott McLeod from Nipissing First Nation, and my question to the candidates is, in recent years, the Truth and Reconciliation movement has been falling somewhat flat. As potential members of Parliament, how do you see moving forward and revitalizing the movement towards truth and reconciliation with Indigenous communities? Miigwech.
I'm going to start with Mr. Rhoda because the Liberals were in power the last 4 years. Do you agree with what Chief McLeod just said?
Ani Bourgeot, I agree with him wholeheartedly. It has fallen flat. I mean, we started off on a really good clip and started implementing, but the truth and reconciliation is exactly what has to happen. Unfortunately, it's not that easy, and it comes down to communication and talking, finding out how we're going to do it. There's a lot that's been done over the years, and it hasn't been nice. What it does is it affects multiple generations. So what we have to do is figure out, okay, how do we make it better? Throwing money at it is not how we're going to do it. It may help you feel better on the short term, but we have to help our Indigenous friends get ahead. The Indigenous people have to be able to
Okay, we're going to open it up for debate now, Anthony. Mark had his hand up first.
Well, I think it's absolutely important to recognize this. And I can tell you that Dr. McDougall's school is under renovation right now to recognize truth and reconciliation. That school is having about a $40 million rebuild on it. That school will be designated to First Nations activities. It's first of its kind. It was designed and developed through DSAB, and it recognizes First Nations issues.
Is that a QPP initiative or City of North Bay initiative?
No, it's a DSAB initiative directly through the cooperation with the provincial government. And we'll open that mid-November. It's a huge step forward for the Indigenous groups.
Rob Boulay.
I have here with me, and you can find it online. This is a new deal for Northern Ontario. And with New Democrats, we came together and launched this yesterday. In here, key issues that affect Indigenous communities. It's front and center. We will work on truth and reconciliation, and we will recognize the United Nations declarations of Indigenous rights.
Anthony?
Yeah, we recognize UNDRIP as well, and it's something that has to be passed and legislated. One of the things I'd like to point out is one of the most important things for people is to control their education. The Anishinaabe Education Agreement was signed and passed in Parliament. I happened to be sitting in the Speaker's chair when it passed, so I was thrilled to see it go through. And what happens is 33 First Nations communities in Ontario have come together and they control their education. What makes me even more proud is it's based right here in Nipissing-Temiskaming on Nipissing First Nation. The headquarters is there, and making sure that people who get taught history get taught their history, and they understand. They feel comfortable when the history replaces them. They can put themselves in the history. One of the common things that I use, and I kid around as it, I went to a French school, so. The history that I learned in school went from 1534 when Cartier got here to the Plains of Abraham when Wolfe took over. After that, nobody existed, nobody after. After that, I have friends who went to English school. The bulk of it happened after the Plains of Abraham up until Confederation. So you see, if you're a First Nation person, you want to be writing your own history book so you can include yourself in the history and make sure you're not just a side character.
I just want to give anybody else, Alex, I just want to give somebody else a chance.
I certainly applaud Mr. Rhoda's accomplishments in that area. I think it's wonderful. And certainly sovereignty over education is key in truth and reconciliation. And the fact that this was originated in North Bay is also fantastic.
All right, Jordy.
But the Green Party would work closely with First Nations to engage in a nation-to-nation dialogue and include and develop inclusive policy and a new governance body, the Council of Canadian Governments. And this will include Indigenous nations and peoples as equal partners with other levels of government in the development of shared national goals, and will be the vehicle for the revamped First Ministers Nation.
The Conservatives support the reconciliation process with the Indigenous, and we want to focus to bring forward policies that have real measurable improvements and invest in important areas such as housing, health services, good quality drinking water. We need to invest that has a translation into meaningful results on the ground.
All right, we're going to go ahead.
How is that going to happen? When Andrew Scheer was on the national debate, then you defeated a motion at Senate because you didn't want to have prior informed consent for First Nations to run projects through their territory. How is that going to happen under your government? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think the Conservatives will take Conservatives support the national inquiry and will be called, I can't answer that right now.
Okay, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll have one more directed question, and then we'll have one more video question, and then some spare questions before we sign off, but we're get into the home stretch. More behind the ballot after this. Ballot and our debate for Nipissing-Temiskaming 2019. I'm Greg Esterbrooks with the 5 candidates running for the riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming, and the final directed question goes to Mr. Rob Boulay of the New Democratic Party. Your leader, Jagmeet Singh, has pledged $100 million to help keep children away from gangs. In larger centers, gun control is a major issue. What is your party's stance on banning handguns and assault rifles in Canada?
All right, it's a great question. So handguns, and if I understand the party platform correctly, handguns will be up to municipalities to make that decision whether they need to belong there or not. Assault rifles, I'm not clear on that portion.
Well, again, according to the question, your leader, Jagmeet Singh, has pledged $100 million to help keep children away from gangs. And of course, guns are more prevalent in the bigger centers. There's a fear of assault rifles becoming more prevalent in bigger centers. So we want to know what the NDP would do to kind of, try to mitigate that from becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, we need to do more outreach and work with youth to keep them away from gangs and show them that they do have other choices, that it's not just a gang life for them, to give them access to programs and supports that will help them succeed.
Anybody else want to jump in on gun control?
Certainly I will, Greg.
Anthony had his hand up first, so I'm going to let Anthony go first. Go ahead, Anthony.
Actually, we have announced a ban on assault rifles. Now, assault rifles are military-style rifles. One of the key things there is they're rifles that you can easily get a clip. Right now, a semi-automatic rifle in Canada can only have 5 rounds in it. With an assault rifle, bringing it up from the States, it's not very hard to get one that holds 30, 50, or even 100 rounds. You don't need that many to go hunting. And it's important that we protect hunters' rights to hold guns. An agreement today, or to further discussions, where municipalities will have the right to ban handguns from their municipalities. And there was all the mayors of larger municipalities in Southern Ontario who were in favor. I think that protects people in Northern Ontario who are gun owners, and it allows us to put pressure where the problem occurs. So when there is a gun problem, we will be able to put more down at the location where the problem is.
Mark King, go ahead.
So, Anthony, you did not support the repeal of the long gun registry when legal gun owners overwhelmingly supported its repeal. In fact, you were silent on the issue because you did not represent the will of the constituents, which is one of the highest priorities in this particular region. This summer, you touted an empty downtown North Bay with Minister Bill Blair, and now you support further banning of legal handguns. Anthony, you simply don't understand that it's the criminals who have the illegal handguns, and you are doing nothing to prevent the use of illegal handguns.
Well, Mark, you'd be walking downtown with a 6-pack on each side of you, I'm sure a 6-shooter on each side if you had it your way and your party had your way, because there would be no controls whatsoever. And that's not acceptable to Canadians. And as far as me staying quiet, we had a lot of discussions going on. It's just I'm not the showman you are. I try to get things done rather than put on a show.
Instead of punishing honest, hard-working
where are they getting punished? Tell me.
Hunters.
Tell me how they're getting punished.
Farmers and hunters.
Tell me how they're being punished.
Why you never take a stand on the
Tell
issue?
me. Tell
you
me.
haven't. You
tell
know
me.
it, and
tell
I
me
know
how,
it.
No, tell me how they're being punished.
Well, because
tell me how they're being punished.
Simply
nothing,
banning
Mark.
Of
You're
long
not giving
gun. No, you did it. You did it. You didn't
Banning of
say
what?
anything.
Banning of what?
Long gun registry.
There was no banning of guns. They got to keep their guns and go hunting. What are you talking
But
about?
they had to register, right? You treated them like criminals.
No, you didn't.
That's not the way things work in Northern Ontario.
So you registered your car. Are you a criminal? You registered your bicycle. Are you a criminal? Mark, you're not
The
making any sense
PPC
here.
will repeal Bill C-71.
And what's wrong with C-71? Tell me.
C-71, you know what's wrong
No,
with it. I
there's-
don't need to tell you.
You need to
You
tell the
know.
people back home.
You need to tell the people
them.
back home
No,
because
tell
they're
them.
waiting for your
No,
answer.
you tell them what's
What
wrong.
is your answer
Tell me
as
what's
far
wrong.
as legal gun owners?
Other-
What is your
other-
answer?
other than-
you don't have an answer.
other than rhetoric, you
Because
don't
you
have-
were quiet. You never
No.
stood up for Northern Ontario hunters,
Mark,
farmers, all of
You're
the
doing
people.
well with the gun owners because, that's what they want to hear because that's the rhetoric that would usually come out of Geordie. But wait a minute. Tell me what's wrong with C-71.
You tell me what's wrong with it.
No, I'm saying it's good.
Because you should know your
C-71
you
C-71
should know what your constituents want.
So you don't like a background check is what you're telling me. That's not a good thing.
Is it? I don't know. You tell me.
It
What
is.
what are the people in
background-
Ontario saying, in Northern Ontario
A background
saying?
check on
Right?
somebody before they buy a gun, I think, is a good thing. I think most people at home would
We
agree
already
with that.
have that.
Jordy,
in place.
you were mentioned by Anthony. I want to give
Yeah,
you a
we
chance to
already
rebut
have that
Mr.
in
Rhoda.
place. And look,
No, a 5-year was in place. We made it lifetime so that you know the difference. That's what C-71 did.
Canadian gun control laws are not about control, it's about safety.
Exactly.
And that's what's important.
well, except that
Safety.
the
Are you
rate-
saying that gun owners are unsafe? Is that what you're saying?
Legal-
We
The
need to have
unsafe
safe-
use of guns
Mark,
is happening with
do you go get your driver's
illegal
license?
handguns
We make sure that the
in
streets
the
are
cities
safe.
of Toronto.
We need to make
where
sure that
shootings
owners of
are
firearms
happening
are
every
being
night.
safe.
Not in North Bay, not in New Liskeard, not in the Tri-Town areas.
So according to the
It's
PPC,
not
we
happening
can walk
there.
around with handguns in downtown
Pardon?
North Bay. According to the PPC, we can walk around with handguns
I
in
didn't
North
say
Bay.
that at all.
Well, you're saying a lot of
don't
things we
have
didn't
that
say
problem.
either.
Anthony, we don't have that problem. But
Exactly.
we have the problem in Toronto.
Exactly the
But
discussion.
yet what you're doing is you're
One
forcing
size
it.
gun laws don't work.
In exactly
you're
what we're
absolutely right.
Exactly what we had discussion. If you'd watched the news today, the discussions that the Prime Minister had with big city mayors was allowing cities to make their decisions on what guns they want in their cities. I think that's good because it's localizing the problem and allowing us to solve the problem that we have.
All right, now I'm going to a question on the arts. There's a segue. This question comes from local businessman Richard Fortin. It is a video question and will change the mood a little bit, I think, with this question. Let's roll it.
Hi, I'm Richard Forte. I'm the owner of RFP Media, a new media production company based here in North Bay, Ontario. How are you and your party proposing to invest in and support the needs of the creative industry here in Northern Ontario?
We're going to start with the Green Party candidate on the question dealing with the arts. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, the Green Party, of course, supports the arts and culture. And we would do that by increasing funding to all of Canada's arts and cultural organizations. Now, this would include the Canada Council for the Arts, the National Film Board, and Telefilm Canada. We'd also review tax incentives for film productions to ensure that all parts of Canada are competitive, but also give incentives for crews to use local talent as well as local production. And we would also reform antitrust laws to enable the breakup of media conglomerates. Now, this would allow more people in radio, television, and arts and entertainment to enter
Open
the
up,
marketplace.
everybody. Who else? Anybody want to jump into arts funding? Anthony, go
Sure.
ahead.
I mean, I can tell you what we've done over the last 4 years. We've doubled the funding to the Canada Council for the Arts, the country's largest arts funder, to $550 million. Nothing had been done since 2006. So we increased that and made sure the new funds will go to mainly first-time recipients. We increased investment in first-time 10 years in festivals, allowing smaller communities to promote the performing arts and make relevant heritage programs strong. What we looked at is, what we've also done is supported CBC Radio, something that the PPC wants to cancel altogether. We want to make sure that the Canadian contact is there.
$1.2 billion.
Mark, if you don't
Anthony,
mind, let
you
me
know
finish.
that. You know that.
Canadian
That's
content is
$1.2
there
billion.
so that small communities are reflected in our communities and across the country. It's important. With a country our size, we do need that national broadcaster that keeps us together. I've got more if you'd like me to go.
No, that's okay for now. We'll give somebody else a chance. Anybody else want to weigh in arts funding? Go ahead, Rob.
I want to touch on the arts funding. Specifically, a lot of the artists that I speak to are independent. They're self-employed and they're working contract to contract. And we want to make sure a new democratic government is going to look after pharmacare for these folks and dental care. So that helps relieve that burden for them when they're in between jobs and they're not getting benefits, so that they can be healthy and happy and be active members of their arts community.
Okay, I'm going to move on to another question. Whenever a government's been in power for a long time, of course, there is baggage to deal with. And then last year, the Prime Minister has to deal with some old pictures that surfaced about some certain outfits that were worn and makeup that was applied. And also there was another issue, of course, about SNC-Lavalin. I'm going to start with Jordy, and then we'll open it up after that. Your thoughts about the Trudeau scandals from 2019?
Oh, well, you know what? For me, the scandals have wasted so much time with the government when they should be getting stuff done, and they're busy dealing with the fallout from Justin Trudeau and his shenanigans. The SNC-Lavalin is absolutely shameful. He dismissing 2 top women in the ministry from their positions because of because he's trying to keep SNC-Lavalin alive and allowing them to break the law.
Mr. Rhoda, there's 2 obviously
Yes.
big scandals that you've responded to in the media outlets before about SNC and about
SNC,
the other issue.
SNC, there's 2 options there. One is a PDA, and that's basically referring it to mediation so that you will get a penalty, or you go to criminal court. When it's a corporation, going to criminal court will not make that much of a difference. All that was done, they asked the Solicitor General to bring in counsel to make sure that they were making the right decision. That's what they did. On the other one, the blackface, no, you know what? It's something that I was very disappointed in, very ashamed of, but it is what it is, and it was done a long time ago. The important thing is that we learn from it and we take it as an opportunity, a catalyst, to bring it out in the open and face the racism that is existing and some of our right-wing parties are encouraging out there. Now, we want to talk about scandals. How about lying about being a broker when you really weren't? Or when you're a minister, you go to bed with some motorcycle mama and leave your briefcase at her place. You want, I mean, we could dig up stuff for a long time. You know, we've got to move on
so
and
to
get
that
things
point,
together.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
I might be able to. So, Anthony, you have aided and abetted Trudeau in every step of the way with every political scandal. You supported and agreed with Trudeau with a $10.5 million payout to a terrorist, Omar Khadr. You supported the Liberal spending and massive deficits. You supported Trudeau on the refusal to hold a referendum on electoral reform, then failed to introduce any reform at all. You have been fine with Trudeau's claim that returning ISIS fighters were no threat to national security. You agreed when the Liberals refused to give summer job grants to more than 1,400 groups because they wouldn't attest to support the Liberal abortion policy. You supported Trudeau's every fundraising where selling cash for access to himself and his ministers. You supported Trudeau in 2017 when he said 4 million small business owners in the country were rich tax cheats who are not paying
Okay,
their
I'm going to
fair
stop you
Are
there.
you pointing
Anthony,
at me?
You supported that because
go
Calling
ahead.
me a tax cheat?
The only
Anthony
thing,
first,
the
and
only
then
thing I
Jordan
can
she wants.
agree on is Mark is just throwing mud. Now, when you let's talk about the $10.5 million paid to Omar Khadr. Why? Because we were cutting our losses. The previous government, the Conservative government,
could have said
to
no.
Yeah, and then we would have gone into.
Say no.
Let me finish, Mark. I gave you the courtesy, even you were spewing crap out there. Just let me finish. It's courtesy, please. It's manners. So, the $10.5 million was paid out because the court case had been going on for a long time. The previous government under Harper kept dragging it out. This was a court case that was going to be lost. Had we stayed in court, it would have been easily double that.
Were we not
And
talking about
then-
S&C Lavalin?
Yeah, we were talking about
And-
S&C
Well, no, I mean,
Lavalin.
yeah, but I mean, if I'm
But he
being
brought
accused,
that
I
up,
have a
though.
right
He
to
opened the door
explain.
to it, though. He
There's
did-
some
Mark
good
did open the
articles
door
out
to
there,
it.
and I can make them available on my site, why it cost us $10.5 million. It could have cost us a lot less if the Harper government had done, the party you used to belong to, Mark, if they had let them out. On the ISIS file, they talk about not charging people when they come back. Under the Harper government, not one was charged. I believe under us, there was 3 charged because it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. Obviously, the Conservatives weren't interested in putting a lot of work into it.
Jordy, I think your
Well,
party's
I
been
think-
named a couple of times, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, I think our Prime Minister's dealing with an ethics issue regarding the S&C Lavalin, and I was really disappointed, Anthony, that you did not come forward and
He
say
remained
anything
silent.
with
He
that
remained
situation.
Actually, I didn't remain silent.
You- well,
I
you
commented
did.
on it.
Uh,
I
What'd you
commented
say?
on
What'd
it.
you say?
Exactly what the
Good.
facts were. Exactly what the facts were, that there's 2 options. You can punish a company by having a
That's-
PDA, or you can have it by going to court and having criminal charges. Either way, the company
Either way, they
gets
broke the ethics
charged.
by
Either way,
trying
the company
to-
gets charged.
What about,
and they
They
get
tried-
what about Jane and Jody?
Jane and Jody? They
What
left.
about them?
They
Did
left.
you
They're no
say
longer
anything?
part of it.
Did you say anything
Actually, I
to
know
them?
Jane and Jody well.
You remain
But
silent.
you didn't stand up for them.
You remain silent. Is that the way you deal with women?
No,
In
you
your
know-
party?
Mark?
Is that the way you deal with them?
Someone coming from the CPP should be very careful when dealing with
All right,
these
let's
issues.
move on to another
I think-
issue. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Just a quick comment.
Oh, you're loud.
I'm very proud to represent the Green Party, as Elizabeth May is the leader with the most integrity of any of our major political parties right now. Her character is unimpeachable, and she is the hardest working parliamentarian that we have right now. And I'm very glad that we do not have to deal with scandals of that nature.
Go ahead, Rob.
I'm like Alex. I'm very happy to be a New Democrat and not having to deal with these scandals. I think Canadians, we can do better from politicians, and that's why I've got involved. I think we can do this. We can do better.
Another issue I wanted to touch on, and I'll start with Anthony first, is Veterans Affairs. There's an issue that's out there in the public eye about, for example, homeless veterans in this country, and veterans who feel that they're not getting what they deserve. I'll let you start because it's an issue that's been directed at you.
Yeah, no, by all means. Since we got back, we've invested $4.25 billion over the past 4 years to have better care and support for veterans and their families. We've increased income replacement from 75 to 90% of the veteran's salary. We've reopened all 9 of the Veterans Affairs offices that were closed by the Conservatives and opened a new one in BC. So we've got 10 offices that were not there when the Conservatives were there. We've hired over 700 new people to take care of veterans. We've contributed $15 million to the Invictus Games. Education and training is something we've added as well. We had a young veteran who had retired, and he's now getting 90% of his salary, and he's getting his education paid for.
Anybody else
and
wanna
there's
jump
many
in?
more
I wanna
like
jump
that.
in right now.
Go ahead.
Actually, and the question is for Anthony, and Michael McNeil.
Yes.
Had a tremendous meeting at his home, Max and I, and spent probably an hour talking to him. Why does he have to protest out front of your office every day to draw the attention to the shameless disregard he's been given? Quite frankly, I honestly feel at this point we give drug addicts better treatment than we give our veterans. This guy had to jump through hoops to get drugs that were pertinent to his illness, and I found it absolutely terrible. I talk to Bob Wood quite often, and after he retired, and you were the new MP, we could have lost the airbase. We know that, and this is a veterans issue. If it wasn't for Bob Wood behind the scenes going back to the government, we would have lost that. You weren't there, unfortunately.
I wasn't the MP.
He wasn't the MP at that point, Mark.
I said
Actually,
after
let's-
Bob Wood retired.
I'm going to give Anthony a chance to respond to some of
Yeah,
this.
no,
Yes.
Mike McNeil, you know what, I can't discuss his case because it is personal and I don't have the right to do that, but Mike has gone through hell. and he
Oh, you're
deserves to
right.
protest wherever he wants.
Absolutely has.
There's issues there, and I've met with him a number of times, and we continue to work with him as he sees fit.
Okay, we're down to
But,
the last few minutes.
One
Go
second,
ahead.
though. He's talking about the airbase, and it's expanded. We actually do training up there from across Canada. The NORAD site has expanded, and we've got new people in there. So
And
it
I
is
want to
growing.
talk about the
but
airbase
he's
at
talking
this
about the
particular
airbase.
point before we get any further, and I want to talk about PFAS loading in the groundwater that's subject to an issue surrounding D&D and the past history at the airbase. PFAS is a derivative that is a cancer-causing agent. It has now contaminated a number of wells in and around the airbase, and it also now is starting to leachate into Lees Creek. So I want to know, what are you doing about it?
Mark, you know that we took care of it. We've been working on it. Now, this is discretion as a councillor, so that would make a terrible MP when he starts talking about discretionary stuff that he was touched.
All right, I gotta give Alex
you
a
know
second.
full
No,
well-
wait a minute. Let me finish.
the
Let me
Whitfield-
respond to what he said.
Actually, the Whitfield Taxpayers
Let me-
Association
let me,
have
respond
talked to
to
me
it.
about this issue.
Let me
They
respond
want
to
to know
it.
why there was not more publicity about it.
It was in the newspapers.
What the taxpayers want to know what you're doing about it.
Oh, actually, we've solved the problem. We're
good.
in the works. What if you checked with the city, where you're supposed to be responsible as a councillor, and obviously not because you don't know the facts? What we've done is we've worked with the mayor and the people responsible in the staff to bring it to the attention of DND. We found a solution, and the federal government is paying for 92% of the cleanup there, because 92% of it we could put on.
Okay, I'm gonna give Rob Boulay a
I-
chance.
I
No,
want-
no,
I
no.
want-
I'm gonna give Rob
just a
Boulay.
minute.
No, no.
This is an important issue because
no. Mark,
the mayor of
okay,
North
Mark,
Bay
go ahead.
had to write the prime minister to get action on this issue, and I know full well
in
what went
coordination
beyond
with
there.
me, by the way. We worked on
Why
it together.
why the prime minister?
Why
Why
did you
didn't
not-
you do
Why
it?
didn't? Oh, I did. Why didn't you show up on this earlier and just except for when it's convenient for you? And the only time
Oh,
you
I'm
actually
asking
showed
you the
up.
question right now.
No, I'm telling you what you did.
Because the public are watching this. They want to know
Exactly.
what you've done.
We've got a city councillor who is irresponsible, and that's what we have in
That's
North
not
Bay.
irresponsible.
You are
I
irresponsible.
care about the drinking water in this
You
city.
did nothing
as
but
you
complain when
should.
it was good for you. That's self-serving, Mr. King.
Oh, hi, Rob. If you want to get a word in edgewise, go right ahead.
Just quickly, there are too many veterans waiting for services. The past government, the Conservative government, cut a lot of their services, and the Liberals have returned a lot of it. But there are still too many waiting, and we need to get them the services that they need.
Okay, go ahead. And then I'm going to ask a quick question of everybody before closing statements.
Thank you. The rise in rates of suicide among our armed forces veterans indicates that there is a problem, that we are not delivering comprehensive services that veterans need. The Green Party of Canada is committed to working with veterans and their families to pass through reforms that are needed, and as well as modify existing programs so that veterans, their families
Okay.
can access services they need.
First-time home buyers is our last question before we get to closing statements. Struggle with the high price of purchasing a house. What's your party's stance on the lack of affordable housing? Jordy can go first. You got about 30 seconds.
Oh, I got about 30 seconds. When
Yes.
it comes to housing affordability, the Liberal government is not as advertised. They have a heavy-handed mortgage stress test. They're raising the mortgage insurance premiums, and they're punishing the taxes, or punishing new taxes, putting new taxes on the middle class.
All right, Rob can go second, and then Alex can go third.
Housing is a major issue. It's a major issue in North Bay. It's a major issue across the country. The NDP government is going to create 500,000 new low-income housing units, and we're going to deal with that head on.
Okay, quickly, Alex, we got to go soon to closing statements. Alex, go ahead.
Well, the Green Party of Canada would address the housing crisis head on and the root causes thereof, which is money laundering and involvement of criminal elements in the housing markets. which is driving up the prices and making it unaffordable to live in our major metropolitan areas.
Anthony, you have a few seconds for closing
Yeah,
statements.
we've got. I'll just give you a brief outline. The first-time home buyers incentive allows eligible first-time home buyers to purchase a house through a mortgage, a Canada Mortgage and Housing, so that they can purchase the house, and the government is actually buying equity in your house at the same time, which you will repay at a reduced interest rate over time.
Okay, we are pretty much out of time except for the all-important closing statements, and we're going to get to them now in reverse order of the introductory statements. So that means that the man on the far right, geographically, Mr. Rhoda, will
Definitely not.
that was, yes, that's kind of why I said that. Go ahead, sir.
Excuse me. Once again, I want to thank Cogeco for organizing this debate. I appreciated the questions and enjoyed most of the time, the exchanges of ideas on issues that are so important to all of us. Our government has had some great successes, especially in the areas of the economy, jobs, and helping families. We still have a great deal to do. Depuis 2015, ensemble, nous avons fait des progrès concrets en agissant pour investir dans la classe moyenne, faire croître une économie qui profite à tous et à protéger l'environnement. Toutefois, il y a encore beaucoup à faire. En octobre, sur le 21 octobre, je vous demande de votre voix et de votre vote pour continuer le travail qu'on a fait. We must continue to safeguard our healthcare system, prepare for the growing population of seniors, create thousands of new quality jobs, and deal effectively with climate change. I want you to join me in moving forward. I ask for your support. My name is Anthony Rhoda, and I'll be on the ballot on October 21st. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Mr. Rhoda timed that out. All right, we are going to go now to Mr. Rob Boulay, who represents the New Democratic Party, with your closing statement, sir.
Thank you to Cogeco and to the other candidates, and specifically you watching. Many have asked, does my vote matter? I'm here to tell you it certainly does. There are many reasons. A vote for me puts other parties and their leaders on notice that they are not fighting for you. When you vote for me, they're being told what is being done is not acceptable. With your vote, you're saying that big corporations need to pay their fair share like we do. We have learned what happens to us when we vote out of fear. We are going to make better choices with your tax dollars. Why don't we ask questions like where the money comes from when our government buys a pipeline or writes off $1 billion in loans? Yet when someone suggests that you have to get, we're going to give you dental care or pharma care, then we are asked to where's the money coming from? I'm like you. I have struggles. I struggle to pay my bills. I struggle to make ends meet. I work hard and pay for my fair share like you. I am tired of struggling while the rich get richer and corporations get break after break after break, while small businesses, you and I, struggle. We need to change the cycle of broken promises, tax cuts that don't work for you, denying of climate change, or little action on climate change. Northern Ontario is on the front line of climate change, and we need to fight it head on. We need to make change now. No more pretty words, no more angry words. Our plan, the New Deal, is about you, standing up for seniors and veterans, standing up for students, standing for rural communities. You will no longer be written off the political map. I'm tired of pretty words from politicians that go to Ottawa saying they will represent us, the people, then do nothing for the people. I want to stand with people like Steph Paquette and Beth Mares, Charlie Angus and Carol Hughes. You deserve better. You deserve real equality. You deserve to live the best life possible. And you deserve someone in Ottawa who's in it for you. I'm Rob Boulay. Vote for me. Send me to Ottawa.
Again, well timed, sir. All right, we're going to move on to the third candidate, which is Mr. Mark King of the People's Party of Canada. Mark, you've got 2 minutes, sir.
Thanks, Greg and Cogeco. If you truly want positive change for the better in Nipissing-Temiskaming, if you want an MP who will represent you, not the party logo, if you want somebody with courage of conviction, if you want a motivated, capable person who can defend and defeat Anthony Rhoda and the moral and politically corrupt Justin Trudeau, then you have to vote for me, Mark King. There is no alternative. Why Mark King and the People's Party? Because it's time that government put people first. It's time to put power back into people's hands. For too long, Canadian politics has been hijacked by special interest groups, lobbies, corporate interest, and the shenanigans of politicians in Ottawa who are disconnected with ordinary people. This is why government never stops growing. Taxes never stop increasing. The Trudeau government is out of control and out of touch. It has been unable to solve basic problems. Anthony Rota, Justin Trudeau, and the Liberals are pandering to the special interest groups and dividing Canadians into little tribes that can be bought with promises, privileges, and taxpayers' money. Anthony Rota is not speaking for the people of Nipissing-Temiskaming.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Anthony is not fighting for the people of Nipissing-Temiskaming. Anthony Rota speaks and fights for his boss, Justin Trudeau. I will fight for the same values that have guided my entire life: individual freedom, personal responsibility, fairness, and respect.
10 seconds, Mark.
If you truly want positive change and you want an MP to represent you and not the party logo, please vote for me, Mark.
All right,
King.
Mark, you're out of time, sir. We're going to move to Alexander Gom. Okay, no. We're going to go to Alex Gom from the Green Party.
So I get a chance to speak to that, do I?
No, Alex gets to do his closing statement. We may have a minute or two at the end.
Okay. So, our 20-step Mission Possible climate action plan places Canada on something equivalent to a war footing to ensure the security of our economy, our children, our grandchildren, and our future. It is a call for all hands on deck. It incorporates all the requirements for economic justice, just transition, the guarantee for meaningful work, while also respecting the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It recognizes that we cannot achieve climate security in the absence of equity. We must, as a community of nations, ensure that global average temperatures do not exceed a 1.5 degree increase over the global average temperature prior to the Industrial Revolution. There are creative solutions that we can implement together to deal with this crisis head on. Many of those solutions are found here in Nipissing-Temiskaming District, and I welcome the opportunity to look forward to discussing this further with you. Please vote Green.
All right, we're going to move on to Geordie Carr, who represents the Conservative Party of Canada, with her closing statement. Geordie, go ahead.
Thanks again to your TV for hosting this event tonight. Tonight, you've heard a lot of promises. You've heard how the Trudeau Liberals want 4 more years to dig the debt hole a little deeper, take more of your hard-earned money, and waste it on programs that honestly don't address our needs. I'm reminded of the old song, Promises, Promises. The Trudeau Liberals keep making them and keep breaking them. As a taxpayer, I don't think I can afford 4 more years of Justin Trudeau's ideas or embarrassments. Our country has such great potential here at home and around the world, not only because of our resources, but because of our people. I believe government should encourage innovation, reward hard work, and offer programs and services that actually address the issues. I believe we have to learn to live within our means. We do it in our own homes, and we should expect the same from our federal government. If my husband Robert and I ran our business the same way Trudeau Liberals have run the nation for 4 years, we would be out of business, bankrupt, and on the street. You have a choice to make. Do you really want to be disappointed by the Liberals again, or would you rather vote for a clear, honest vision for the future? I humbly ask for you to vote for the Conservative Party of Canada, and I ask for you to vote for me, Geordie Carr.
All right, we have 90 seconds to go, so we have an extended sign-off. So I want to get everybody to tell me, in their mind, I'm going to start with Rob Boulay and then move to Anthony and then move to Mark. You got about 10 seconds. What's the number one issue to you and for Canadians this election?
It's climate change. Has to be. We don't have a choice. We need to deal with this. It's our world.
Okay, Mr. Rota.
The economy and climate change go hand in hand. We can't have one without the other. We have to promote an economy that is green and that benefits everyone in the country.
Mr. King.
Personal responsibility, individual freedoms, respect, and fairness. in a fair country.
Okay.
I think for many voters entering this election, climate change is the number one issue. And in that, there are opportunities which will be made in Canada, and solutions that will be made in Canada.
All right, that brings us to Jordy. Last again.
Yeah. I believe that climate change is an important issue in this election, as well as the tax burden that the individual Canadian is
Where were you
having.
Friday? Climate change is so important. Where were you on Friday?
Okay, wait a minute.
Wow.
This isn't a Q&A session.
Well, I was working, doing what I do. I go door to door every day.
There were 250 people that came out on
Okay,
Friday.
we're gonna have to cut it right there. I want to mention one other thing that is critically important. Many people, thousands of Canadians, have fought and died for the right to vote, to allow you to have the right to
I
vote.
want to
in the
ask,
last
did you take the bus to your rally? Or did you drive your car?
While this goes on in the background, I encourage you to go to the polls or go to the advance poll in advance of the election, please. It's so important to this country.
Yeah.
An airplane.
And
So
to
sure you all took the bus together.
please exercise your democratic right. Want to thank everybody for being here tonight. It was quite an entertaining 2 hours and informative. And of course, I want to thank my employers here at Your TV and Cogeco for allowing me to be your host again. I love hosting these debates. It's a lot of fun. This might have been the most interesting of all. Please, thank you for joining us tonight and enjoying what went on tonight, and maybe you learned a few things tonight about the candidates and their platforms. I'll be back with more Cogeco news coming up soon. And as well, thank you, and join us on election night for more Behind the Ballot.